Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here today and to share our success story with you. So I work at Buena Vista University, and yes, we say that word wrong. We say Buena in Storm Lake, Iowa. Where is Iowa? Iowa is not here. This is Idaho where they grow potatoes. It's not here. This is Ohio. This is Iowa between Minnesota and Missouri, pretty much in the middle of the country. And here's Storm Lake in the northwest quadrant of our state. And here's a picture of a tiny portion of our very beautiful campus. And you can see we've been around for a while. We're not a very big institution. In fact, about half of these students aren't even on campus. They are probably doing online programs, or if you see these pin marks here by various towns in Iowa, those are places where we have community college partnerships. So students may not even need to set foot on campus ever. They can do prerequisites through the community colleges and then seamlessly transfer to BVU while still at these community colleges and get their four-year degree. So this site thing started in 1975, and we've been innovative in some other ways. In 1980, we received the largest per capita gift in the history of U.S. colleges. An anonymous donor gave us $18 million in 1980, and that allowed us to do many things and to innovate further. We were the first college in the US to be completely wireless and to issue laptops to every incoming student. And the wireless and laptop program began in 2000. We no longer give laptops to everyone because most people have them already. But we have been innovative in some important ways. The library didn't always get much of that innovative of love, however. You can tell that we're a pretty old institution, but we didn't have an archives until 2013. And I didn't have my job until August of 2015. So there's a lot to do just with our analog materials, but that didn't mean that I shouldn't think about digitizing things or what to do about born digital materials. But it's been very tough to get people to understand the importance of digital preservation. So a little bit more background before I move on. The things that I did have digitized, our IT department put into Amazon Web Services along with some other digital content. And that has always been kind of a black box to me. How does that function? Can I ever get at that stuff again? How are they checking to make sure that those files are still readable? And I never really got very good answers to those questions. So I started looking around for digital preservation solutions. I looked at Preservica about 4 years ago, loved it, but we couldn't find money for it. It was during the very same time period that my library director was looking at digital commons for an institutional repository, because we didn't have LibGuides, we didn't have an institutional repository. We also needed a new integrated library system for the library catalog and discovery. So there were all kinds of needs and no money. So IT would say, well, just put things in SharePoint. And I'd say, SharePoint, okay, but how does that preserve my content? How does it check my content? And again, I never got really great answers. And please don't get me wrong, I love my IT department. I have a great working relationship with them, but it became clear to me that my needs were different than theirs in some very important ways. So I just kept thinking about ways that I might do some digital preservation. I had attended conferences and workshops and webinars about all these various tools that are out there that you can cobble together and do digital preservation, but that's so laborious and time intensive, and I don't even get to work in the archives 40 hours a week. I have library duties in addition to being the archivist. So that just wasn't feasible for me. Then in November of this past year, I read something on a listserv about Preservica Starter, and this was a way in for smaller institutions. And you could play around and put 5 gigabytes of content into this Preservica Starter for free. And I told my director, I told her I signed up for training. She said, great, go for it. But I was a little hesitant to put too much content into the free version because I just sort of thought that was all I was ever going to have. Based on the lack of love that the library and archives have experienced, I just didn't really envision much more happening for digital preservation. I showed my director a few things that I put into this free version of Starter, and she liked what she saw, particularly when I told her this can serve as an institutional repository. That was kind of a light bulb moment for her, and she said, let's talk to the dean. So we did that in March of this year. I showed the same things to the dean, plus some oral histories I had put in by that time. She was very enthusiastic and said, we need to talk to other people on campus. Let's talk to development. And in the meantime, add a lot more cards. And I said, I just don't know what kind of content I can put in all of these cards that she had suggested. She said, it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of giving them something to imagine, putting their content here. So I did that. We talked to development. Oh, and I'll back up a second. She said, let's move forward. Let's not just stay at this 5 gigabyte level. I see that you have some money in your budget. Let's go forward. And I said, yeah, but what about other years when the budget might be tighter? She said, we will make sure that doesn't happen. So then we talked to development, and I showed him all kinds of cards, and he said, I can see so many uses for this. This is great. And I'm going to be talking to some donors, and I'm going to be showing them some of the things you showed me, and we're off and running. And all of this has really been miraculous to me. So before I move forward on this timeline, I just want to dip down and show the IT things that were also happening. So in the winter, IT told me that they were pulling everything out of Amazon Web Services and putting it into SharePoint, which gave me a bit of a shock. And I told that to my director too, which also escalated the conversation in talking to the dean. And she understood my concern as well when we talked to her. I just was always feeling like I wasn't finding the right language and the right approach in talking to IT about why SharePoint wasn't a solution for me. And David very kindly put together this graph for me, and that really changed the conversation. I could say to my IT person, this is what I need, and this is why I need it. And does SharePoint do that? And he had to admit that it didn't. And it was a very productive and cordial conversation, and it changed the complexion of our relationship significantly, so that by the time we talked to the head of IT, because they were thinking of moving to some kind of document management application software, and I thought, let's talk to them as well and see if Preservica could meet their needs. It has all been really positive in talking with IT since I was able to more clearly tell them what I need and why. Turns out IT is going to go a different direction because they're not so concerned with digital preservation, but they realize why it's important, and that at some point the things that they are going to put in document management are going to come to Preservica. And the head of IT stated very clearly that he's not so crazy about SharePoint either, which was pretty gratifying for me. So here we are today, I'm sharing with you, but that's not the end of the story. In coming weeks, we're going to be talking to our marketing folks on campus and to our President's Council to continue to build interest and support. And then reaching beyond campus, I'm going to speak to the Consortium of Iowa Archivists in July. Iowa is full of educational institutions. We have specialized educational institutions like medical institutions, religious institutions. They all have libraries and archives. We have a ton of community colleges. We have 3 research, regents/research universities in Iowa. And then we have 23 small private colleges. And as far as we can tell, none of those 23 liberal arts 4-year degree granting institutions, which would be considered sisters to BVU, none of them have Preservica Starter, and certainly not Preservica itself. So I'm really anxious to share this news with them, and I hope that some of them will then be encouraged to dive in as well. So capping up our story, there are 5 things that I see as keys to our success, and that was finding an initial foothold, and that was with my library director to tell her we could have an institutional repository with Preservica. Then her interest led us to talk to the dean, and she has become a wonderful advocate for us. And then, of course, development has also become a wonderful advocate for us. Her suggestion of having lots of cards, even though I was hesitant because there was really no content in most of them, has also been such a great suggestion and something I wouldn't have thought of, but it has really ignited people's imaginations. And then, of course, the lovely graph that David put together, which we will share with you if you are having similar issues at your institutions, the Preservica versus SharePoint graph. And then to keep building, and that just means keep saying yes to opportunities to share the story. We're now able to move forward with an institutional repository. We are actually doing digital preservation. We are elevating the value of the archives because people will now realize that we are not just about analog content, but all content that is worth preserving. And we are also elevating our history. So I'll just now show you some things that I have on our instance of Preservica Starter. So here's our home page and a view of our campus. And Storm Lake is the name of the town, but this body of water that you can maybe see up here is also called Storm Lake. So we are situated on a lake. It's really a beautiful campus. Anyway, here are some of these cards that are still empty. But that doesn't seem to matter to people. They see themselves putting content into these cards, which is really gratifying. So this is one of the first things I showed my library director, because this would be the kind of content we'd put in an institutional repository. And because I didn't have access to anything else, I just took photos of these posters and flattened them out a little bit through Photoshop and put them in here. And you can see I don't have much metadata even now, even though these were the first things I put in here, because I don't have much information about them. Joni Anderson is not the creator. She's the faculty sponsor. We don't even know who the students were who did this project, but I could show her that you can zoom in and actually read the content. It's not just a thumbnail. So that was interesting to her. And then I showed her just a few photographs. Oops. So, and I had even fewer photographs in here than I do now. I had just a few buildings in here. At that point when I showed her, I didn't even have these titles. I just had the file names, and there still isn't a ton of metadata, but there's some. It's getting better, and it's all a process, isn't it? And then when we talked to the dean, I showed her these two things, and I showed her our oral histories because our dean is a historian, and so she automatically understood the need for preservation. She has that baked in her DNA. So I could show her that I found this cassette tape that had some professors and administrators and community people who were interviewed by an unknown person about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the Depression, and FDR's New Deal program. I was able to get a transcript made, and again, don't have a ton of metadata yet, but then the audio file is also in here. So if people prefer to listen to it, they can, or if they want to just read it, they can do that as well. And then when we talk to development, I showed him that, you know, the president's emails of importance could go here, student awards could go here. He was very excited about that, donor awards and grants. He loved that. He liked the special events. We haven't had a print yearbook since 1999, but there were a couple of years when they did a video yearbook, and he liked that. This is the alumni publication, and so he was excited about that. His department is responsible for the American Heritage Lecture Series on campus, and while there's nothing in there yet, all sorts of content could reside in there. And he's very excited, excuse me, about athletics films being able to be put in here. I just have a challenge right now because a lot of my digitized films are currently too large to be ingested, and so that's one thing I'm curious about, how Starter might handle that in the future. I did have someone from support show me that I could split those large files into two, and I did do that with a file yesterday, and it worked fine. So that's certainly a solution. Being able to ingest the whole file, of course, would be ideal. And then just recently I added a COVID-19 card, and there will be far more content to go in here, but these were the easiest things to add. And that's just a really, really quick view of the things that I have done.